Welcome to Power Up Podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, Amma Rouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, wellbeing advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Ella Mesmer, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up.
I've been looking forward to this one for a long time because we have the wonderful Leah Francis in the house.
Hello. Woo-hoo. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. Leah Francis is a theatre maker, performer, divisor from Leeds and has experience in directing, facilitating, performing and writing. She trained for a degree in BA Honours Drama at Northumbria University in Newcastle. Since finishing her degree, she worked for various companies, including Live Theatre Newcastle, Red Ladder, Leeds Playhouse, Mind the Gap, and Freedom Studios. Her passion lies in creating theatre involving song, movement, and spoken word that seeks to empower the community. Whoop, whoop. Leah also has a desire for telling diverse women's stories and in 2013 set up her own theatre collective, Speak Woman Speak, who performed internationally at Fira B Festival in Mallorca. More recently, Leah has completed her MA in performance at Leeds Beckett University with a distinction, yes, and has been encouraged to carry on studying and researching for a PhD. Welcome, amazing human being.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that. Reflected back at you.
Thank you so much for joining us. There's so many things I want to dive into off the back of your bio and your energy. And we would start with actually a quote that we discovered this week on a website called Wellbeing in the Arts. It's a mental health and wellbeing support for the arts industry. And on the opening page, they say, there is a mental health crisis in the arts, a workforce at its lowest ever point psychologically, and a lack of support available for those who need it most. And we know your work speaks to mental health and wellbeing, and we're going to get to that. So we just wanted to ask, what do you make of that? What's your kind of initial response to that statement?
Yeah, I would say, it depends when it is, because I think it probably is it more recently, that quote, because I think that's been happening for a long time, psychologically and the lack of support and stuff for people. So back in 2016, I had a breakdown, and I think that was due to burnout, definitely, and doing a lot of work and juggling a lot of things, because as a freelancer in the arts, you have to kind of make a living and look after yourself somehow. So and not being aware of or even of burnout and how that affects you, and how to balance everything. I think, and obviously due to other things as well, but I think the main part of my breakdown was burnout, basically. And I was doing before that I was doing a show called Solid and Better, a kind of seminal show as part of Speak Woman Speak Theatre Collective in 2015, that was. And we didn't ask for the aftercare through the Arts Council, and or the like support. I wasn't aware of the support that the Arts Council had, and I'm sure they didn't have it back then. I'm not sure actually. I don't know. I can't say that because I don't want the Arts Council to but I wasn't aware of the access needs that I am aware of now. So I think that really contributed to not having the access needs, the counselling, the just time for yourself to, to take time out of those hard hitting issues. So the piece Solid and Better was about two women fighting against oppression. So there was one woman from Spain who was fighting against the oppression of the Franco dictatorship at the time, and talking about stolen babies and what happened back in those times. And my character was a woman called Beto Douglas, who is based on a true story about a woman who fought for her freedom and for her son's freedom from enslavement. So obviously it's very hard hitting, and I really wanted to talk about these issues and look at those those histories. But obviously you need to safeguard yourself in those positions, but I wasn't aware of how to do that, being kind of green to the industry and stuff. So now within all my work I make sure that there's access needs for everyone, and whoever is involved, and myself specifically, and it has like highlighted that, that's that show.
I do feel like there are still a lot of artists who aren't aware of that. I think that people are becoming, and artists are becoming more aware of it kind of in recent years and even months to some extent. I think that the building into the process, this provision for mental health and physical health, and there's always been this the thought around physical health, and how are we preparing ourselves for this work, and how are we cooling down from this work, and how are we looking after our physical bodies. But I think about so many shows I've seen that my friends have been in, either producing or performing, and there was absolutely no aftercare or care throughout the process. And these are shows where they're working with and exploring really charged, emotionally heavy or laden issues like the ones you just mentioned. And I feel like it's kind of really only in recent years that people have started to realize that there's an absence of that, and actually it's really integral to the process. And then, okay, how do we support those needs, and what does that look like in this project? So to be honest, I really don't think it would have only been you, and I don't even know if it would have been, just down to being green. I wonder how much it's integrated, and how much awareness there was and there is in the arts and in the industry about that part of the process being as important as the making of the work, and the performing of the work.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important for me now. Like, I'm working, and I only kind of try and work with people who have that integral as part of their process now, because I need it. I can't, if I'm looking at those or dabbling into those types of issues. Like, I recently did a piece about domestic violence, and I was like, we need to have the care in place for that. Like, and it's usually down to budgets, etc. But it's not an excuse. You can't forgo your mental health. For we do get affected by these things, just because we're performers, and we might look resilient. It's still, those things get into you, and you have to safeguard yourself.
Yeah, I can certainly remember like working for other people where, it was almost like dig deeper, Ella, like we want to see your trauma on stage. But then there would just be like, okay, now the show's over, bye. And it was like, I've just dug deep, and it can be really tough that if there isn't the proper aftercare. There was a show, Leah, which was actually the first time I kind of really, well, it was really powerful. It was during lockdown that I watched a show that you had made, and it was really powerful. And then the after conversation was so careful and conscious and caring, and it just really stayed with me. It was definitely like then when I met you in real human form, not in the Zoom box. Like I think it was like 6 months later. It's like, oh my gosh, it's you. You're amazing. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about that show, because that was directly kind of related to mental health and well-being.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is a show called White Walls, that I created after my breakdown in 2016. It was kind of like a culmination of talking about my experience, but also in terms of like in relation to racism that I received growing up. So so I'm mixed race, half Syncitian and British. So I grew up in like majority white areas growing up. So White Walls was kind of like that experience of feeling surrounded by just whiteness, really, in like institutional base, as well as, you know, my friendship group, or just and how I reacted to that. And, you know, there was themes of abuse in there as well. So that was something that was hard to deal with, and the process needed to be really held throughout that as well. So we made sure that I had like counselling, and whoever else was involved needed to have that. And we also worked with a woman called Letitia. Yeah, do you know her? She's amazing.
Her. Yeah, I know her.
Lovelace Hanson, that's it. Divine Lovelace Hanson. Yeah.
Loosely through another friend.
Yeah, honestly, her work is just so powerful. Like, you know, we connected with ancestors. We did a lot of ritual-based things throughout that process in order to kind of, me and the other, so there's another white performer that worked alongside me. And yeah, we both worked together on that healing and looking at ancestry, and putting coconut oil on to protect you from anything that you might be delving into in terms of those
I've never heard about that.
Yeah.
What's the like?
Well,
why coconut oil?
Because the coconut is like hard. You know, it's like it's hard on the outside, and obviously got the juice, whatever, on the inside. But it's like a form of protecting you from anything that you might be, you know, delving into that will be difficult, I suppose, as well. Just working with Letitia was, it set the kind of tone for the rest of the project, and really having a form of self-care throughout it, looking after yourself, and checking in and making sure we were both okay, because it was hard hitting. It was really empowering, but then halfway through the project, lockdown happened, so we had to then transfer the piece to online. It was going to be a live theatre performance, but we had to put it online, which was difficult, but we did it in the end, and I'm glad we did, because it was entertainment for people in lockdown, but also it was just like a kind of final, end to that exploration of the work, and my mental health experience. And it was really, it was a really empowering process. So I would maybe, I don't know, obviously make sure you have the care, but I would recommend it to anyone who's been through a mental health experience to talk about in any way, in their art form, however they can talk about their issues,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like one of our upcoming series is around creativity as a tool for revolution, and I kind of feel that you're also speaking to like creativity as a healing tool, and I think there's a lot of power in that, of again, like the importance of how we do that to really care for ourselves, but that there's a power in how we can use art as a sort of a form of therapy or a form of healing.
Yeah, most definitely.
And really unapologetically just like, you know, owning your journey and like the fabric of your truth, because Yayoi Kusuma, I know she uses her work to share her mental health journey and her mental health experiences and challenges she's had with it. And from, I think, from quite young, from a child actually, and all the way through. And she's still, so all of her work with, you know, where she plays with light and where she plays with polka dots, and it all comes from her mental health. It comes from hallucinations that she's had from very young and through. And there's no kind of separation of like, this is me and these are my mental health challenges, or this is my mental health. She actually just unifies all of it and puts all of it into her work. And I absolutely love that thread and cultivation of who, you know, her full identity in her work.
Yeah. The more we feel that we can do that, the more it's going to make it less taboo, less stigmatized.
Yes,
you know,
100%.
totally. Because I think there's so much shame and kind of like we're all going through it, but not speaking about it because we think we're the only people going through it. You know, this sort of like everyone's suffering alone, trying to pretend to be normal, whatever normal is, when normal doesn't exist, right? I also wonder how much like our society, you know, this kind of society construct is not really serving us. Particularly, for example, that we're so disconnected from nature, and you know how healing nature can be, how disconnected we can be from the arts, and how healing the arts can be, that we kind of don't. We're so often striving for success, and that might be monetary, and it's not really actually listening to like, well, what do I actually need? You know, what does my body need right now? Kind of honoring things like rest and the kind of integration process and processing what we've just been going through, instead of, you know, like for example, these performances where we've had to kind of be performative with trauma experiences, and then they just expect you to just come back and do that tomorrow, but there isn't that kind of time to just process what you've been through.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously it's the white supremacist patriarchal that race that we're in. And you know, I think through doing my MA, I really got to look into like Black feminist theory and people like Audre Lorde and bell hooks, and looking at self-care as a form of warfare, you know, like and then looking at more recently Trisha Hersey's Nat Ministry, and just wow, like how
doing it.
beautiful is that to be able to like use rest as a form of resistance and a form of reparations to actually claim back your power and heal that heritage and history, and you know, that intergenerational trauma. It's just just really incredible, like to be able to do that, like in kind of opposition to my BA honours, which was 12 years ago now, 2009. I graduated from that. So when I was in Newcastle, I felt like I wasn't held at all and not given any Black female or any Black at all artists, practitioners to look at. It was kind of like your standard like Bertolt Brecht and you know, all these. So I just felt like I wasn't accepted in those institutions, you know. So so now doing my MA, I just felt so like, you know, it was my research and what I wanted to do, and took charge of that, and that was really empowering as well.
You mentioned your theatre collective, Speak Women Speak, earlier.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
So that was in 2013. Wow, 10 years ago. Yes, 10 years ago now. It was set up as a way to kind of counteract the narratives we were seeing a lot in theatre at the time, which was like everybody was somebody's wife, everybody was somebody's daughter. Like, obviously that might be the case, but you know, you never had like the woman having autonomy of her own story and from her perspective, really. Well, obviously they did exist, but from what we were seeing on the majority scale, it wasn't there. And yeah, and just also kind of taking that power back of having to be cast in other people's work. So we wanted to make our own work and from our own voices and what we were interested in and what we wanted to talk about, you know, and diverse women. So obviously every woman's diverse, but Black and ethnic minorities, or you know, like so we set it up with a Spanish woman, an African woman from Zimbabwe, and myself. So it was obviously from our perspectives, basically. And yeah, we wanted to say, and at the time there was a lot of like men speaking for women or doing projects with women and not having that care and that aftercare in there as well. Like, and there's also a story that I was part of another theatre collective, theatre company. Well, it was actually a media company, and we went to a meeting, and the guy that was running it said to me, "You just sit there and take notes." Like I was just the
Wow.
like I was just the. I've told him this. We've had the conversation, so we've had the conversation about it. You're the reason why I set up Speak Over Speak. It was part of the reason.
Is he embarrassed?
He was like, "I want some royalty."
Bloody cheek, imagine.
The cheek. But no, at the time I was so mad. I was like, "You just sit there and take notes." No, I'm gonna speak, woman, speak. Like, forget that. Like, we have. Yeah, and in fact, like, it's quite ironic that when I had my breakdown in 2016, I had a real problem with like talking afterwards and being able to speak and articulate myself and feeling confident in those social situations and stuff. So it was quite ironic that I had a theatre collective called Speak One Speak, yet felt, you know, unable to speak. But obviously our tagline is the voice speaks, the body speaks, the woman speaks. So it's not, you don't just communicate through the voice and how, you know, that's not just how we interact, but obviously it's a big part of it, but the body speaks as well. And I really got a real sense of that coming out of that breakdown, and being able to, you know, like look at dance as a formation more so as, you know, and integrating that within my work. So movement and dance, and, you know, not, and looking at different languages, and maybe even sometimes a kind of, I suppose, like an intuitive speech, you know, like, so it might sound like gobbledygook, but you just speak however you want to speak in that moment. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a language necessarily that we all know. It's just sound and movement and whatever comes out. So that kind of, you know, going through that process has helped me to look at my artwork and my practice a little bit differently as well, you know.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, yeah.
I just want to share that really made me think, you know, the Bechdel test, which is that test they do with films where they see, I think the rules to pass it are that the film has to feature at least two women talking with each other about something other than a man. Which you'd think would be really easy, right? You'd think that, there must be loads of films, but loads and loads of films fail that test.
Wow.
Right. And so, yeah, I think that just highlights how important projects like Speak Women Speak are for for rethinking, like that we have conversations about lots of things, for example.
Yeah, we definitely do, but it's also okay, I just want to say, to have, you know, like some women, maybe, you know, cis heterosexual women do have conversations about men as well, and that's okay as well. Like, you know, like I remember, you know, it's not just about like we all hate men because we're feminists or whatever, you know, or we don't talk about men. We talk about everything. So yeah, speak about all of it. Like, don't be shy to, if your work is feminist, have to not speak about men. You know, it's the reality that we live in, that we do also do speak about men.
We all live in a world together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So can I just close with a quote from Audre Lorde, the great Audre Lorde? So, caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the Power Up Power Team.
I'm Ella Mesmer.
I am Amma Rouge. And we are Power Up Podcast.